Hey guys, Mr. Brennan here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Rwanda genocide before you watch your Hotel Rwanda video that is streamed over the internet. Just to give you a little background before it. So Rwanda, country in Central Africa, genocide. I mean, we've talked about a couple of genocides this far this year, but just as a review, mass killing of a group of people based on race, ethnicity, religion, gender, basically is targeting a specific group of people, often grouped together with the term ethnic cleansing, where we're trying to eliminate an entire group of people from a country or the world in general. We thus far this year have covered two in pretty vast detail. One, of course, being the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. The second being the Ukrainian famine. Remember, that was under Joseph Stalin in the 1930s in Ukraine, a lot of times called the Black Famine, where it's a forced famine. He refused food and seed to a group of people who were not following exactly what he wanted. He wasn't happy with their agricultural output. He then cut off transportation to them, if you can remember, to and from the city, had Ukraine as a whole on lockdown, and it led to over several million deaths along the way from starvation. So when we talk about Rwanda, it is an incredibly small, landlocked country, Central Africa. It's a story of imperialism. And I know you're going to say, oh my God, this genocide, 1990s, how could that be? You know, it was in 1884 that we saw the Berlin Conference when it came to imperialism of Africa. Yeah. Okay. Even though these countries gained independence after World War II, they still dealt with the legacy of imperialism and kind of a lot of the negative aspects of it. So the Rwanda genocide, you have to understand, you had a group of people here, two groups of people who had been broken apart basically for a long time in Rwanda's history. Two groups. You had the Hutus. They made about 85% of the population. They were going to be the people who worked the land. And then you had 15% of the population called the Tutsi. And for a large portion of history, they were the ones who held the power. They were the cattle herders. They were considered to be slightly wealthier, slightly more elegant, but they coexisted well before European arrival. When the Europeans arrived, at first Belgium was a German colony, and eventually, though, it's going to be given to to Belgium, and Belgium rules them ruthlessly. You know, it's pretty famous example I know we talked about in class, the King Leopold and his absolutely brutal rule in the Congo. Very similar in Rwanda. And what they did, the Rwandan people, the European people, is they are really going to highlight the differences between these two groups that were not incredibly evident before European arrival. Sure, they had certain occupational differences that happened, but after World War I, Belgium is really going to start, okay, to divide them almost ethnically. So what started as kind of a economic type of division between the two in terms of who owned land, who owned cattle, et cetera, maybe a job segregation, so to speak, now turned into an ethnic one. And Belgium gave the Tutsis the power, and they gave them privilege under their rule. Why? There were fewer of them. So you have this Hutu population, 85%, that should probably be rebelling against Belgium, but they were so focused on the Tutsis and the injustices that the Tutsis had of them, that they didn't fight against Belgium, and Belgium didn't have to worry about huge rebellions taking place with the majority of the population. And they did anything to accentuate differences. Very famously, they measured the noses of Hutu and Tutsis. And it was said that the Tutsi had thinner, more elegant noses, that they talked about eugenics and how Tutsis were just a superior group both of intelligence and physical characteristics. Interestingly enough, when Belgium leaves in the 1960s, um, they left the power to the Hutu people, that 85% majority population who had been, in their eyes, been wronged by the Tutsi population since colonial rule began. And what you had was, you essentially had two groups, two rival groups that through colonialism had created even greater differences, were now going to be asked to coexist on their own. And the people who had held power prior, the minority population, are no longer going to hold power in Rwanda. And this became an issue. And the president of Rwanda, a Hutu, was seen over time, by the time we hit 1993, being too kind to the Tutsi population. Okay, a lot of the Hutus did not support what their president was doing. They wanted the Tutsis to pay for colonial rule under Belgium. They wanted them basically out of Rwanda so that the Hutu majority, the population, could be ensured to economic prosperity and make sure they didn't have to live through the past. Hutu extremists, or people who were really, really pro-Hutu, they were not about the coexistence of the Hutu or the Tutsi, are going to grow increasingly angry with him. In 1994, okay, the president's plane is going to crash. It was said that he was signing a peace treaty with the Tutsi population, and the Hutu are going to eventually, they're going to blame this on the Tutsis. So in 1994, here we are. We have the Hutu and the Tutsi. The Hutu is the majority population who had been given the power from Belgium, okay? And their president his plane is going to crash. A lot of the people are going to blame it on the minority Tutsi population. And what you are going to see, this is the event that sparked the outbreak of the genocide, right? This wasn't the only event that caused the genocide against the Tutsis to take place. It's the initial spark. Like, think back World War I, right? When we talk about Franz Ferdinand and his assassination and how it led to World War I. It's the immediate reason. Same thing here. Hutu president's plane crashing on the way to sign peace treaty is going to lead to genocide against the Tutsi population. Of course, these differences have been going on for hundreds of years prior to this. Within the first 24 hours after the death of the president, okay, the Tutsi population is going to begin to be exterminated. There is no better word for it. Hutu extremists began to take over the government. So you have a couple of parties here. You have the Hutu military, the actual official Hutu military, who is going to, kind of just allow this genocide to take place. And then you have a militia, a local unofficial military group. In the movie, you'll hear them referenced time and time again. They're called the Interahamwe militia. They're going to be the ones who are going to do the large-scale executions that take place. About 20% of Belgium's total population, about 20% of Rwanda's total population is going to be executed, okay, for no reason other than they are Tutsi, or they are Hutus who support Tutsis. During the summer of 1994, 100 days, over 800,000 deaths. Some people said there's as many as 1 million. One of the major differences here and why these numbers were not as sure of, this was not as well documented or as well organized of a genocide as what, like, for example, Hitler proposed and carried out in Nazi Germany, or Pol Pot in Cambodia, where very precise records were taking place. That is not the case during the Rwanda genocide. These killings began in Kigali, which is the capital city, which is a shock. It's a modern city. It has a lot of European influence in it, had a good amount of money, but the Europeans are going to flee. They are going to leave any that are there. They don't think it's a safe situation there. And they're essentially leaving the Tutsi population to be exterminated by this Interahamwe, or this organization, this militia of Hutu extremists. And one of the more disturbing things about this genocide, as you'll see in the movie, is a lot of the killing was done through machete. Very antiquated, brutal way of death. A lot of them were purchased from China on discount. And these machetes were given out to the Hutu population with the goal of exterminating the population. These extremists, Hutu extremists, make it very clear their goal is to make sure that there are no more Tutsis. That's the ultimate goal, no more Tutsis in Rwanda. This will spread and carry on. One of the big things here, let me go back for a second, actually, so we can look at it. You can see the machetes here, and you can see this is the Interahamwe here. They're not an official military gear. No, they are going to be just regular, everyday people who are going to join this group, and they're going to lead the slaughter. And you're going to say, well, where is the regular military? The regular Hutu military, listen, they will be held responsible as well when this event ends, because they should have intervened. They should have stopped it from happening. Instead, they sometimes incited it, other times just let it happen, because they too wanted a chance at power. You'll see that there was a UN peacekeeping group that was there. In Kigali today, a very, very famous memorial is set up for them. It was made up essentially of 10 Belgian peacekeepers. And that's essentially all that was sent to stop this from happening. And they could not fire unless fired upon. It was very difficult for them to be able to, do anything to really help the Tutsi population. And you can see, we've seen similar things in India. We saw similar things in South Africa. These were the pass books. They were identification books. And it said whether you were Hutu or Tutsi. And even moderate Hutus were not safe during this. So you might have been married to a Tutsi and you were a Hutu. If you sided with, okay, the Tutsi population and tried to protect them, you were as good as dead yourself. This has been an enormous legacy of the Rwanda Genocide, the treatment of Tutsi women, raped, held as slaves for large portions of time. There have been numerous specials done on this population. Oprah, for example, had one of these, and the healing that's had to take place over the years, the psychological damage that was done, and now the treatment to get these women to try to integrate into society the best as possible they can post-genocide has been really tough. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of the Rwanda genocide was the lack of international help that took place. So you had this is not the 1940s. There were newscasts that were broadcasting straight from Kigali, risking their own lives, but you watched this destruction on the nightly news in the summer of 1994, and many people said, why is the United States not intervening in this particular incident? And the truth was that it had a lot to do with earlier interventions that had been tried in Africa, specifically in Mogadishu, Somalia, a couple of years earlier. That is the movie what Black Hawk Down is based off of. But the UN took a big hit here, and the United States for not intervening. This is one of the major criticisms internationally of Bill Clinton's presidency. Here you will see the UN peacekeeping forces that were, left in place to try to at least help some of the people here and intervene in some of the tensions that had taken place. Again, today, Rwanda, Hutu and Tutsis together, it's still not the most stable country. They are not at civil war. A lot of the Hutu extremists were scared of getting caught. They went across the border. They escaped into the Congo. They escaped into other areas of Africa. There's a large healing process that even 25 years later is still going on amongst these people. Because listen, your neighbor that you live with today might have been responsible for the deaths of a large percentage of your family. and being able to live and have a stability after that has been pretty tough on these populations. And like I said, this is a really tough issue, a really important issue. One of the things was the violence displayed during this was absolutely awful. The failure of the world to intervene, especially the United Nations and the United States. Then you talk about imperialism as being a part of this. That had a pretty big impact as well. And what I just want to show you real quick, when I have the ability to get here, hopefully. Da, 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 da. Let's see if I can get to the internet here. I want to have the ability, once this comes up, give me a second. Okay, to show you hold on. Oh my God. Okay, here we go. So in the movie Hotel Rwanda, I made a little key. You'll find this as well in your assignment key. This is a story of Paul Rusesabagina, true story, played by Don Cheadle. He is a moderate Hutu. If it helps you in the movie, I always say Hutu haters. They're the ones who are doing the killing. Tutsi terrorized, right? But Paul Rusesabagina is the manager of a hotel, the Mucaline Hotel, owned by Europeans. During this, he is going to have no choice but to help out Tutsis and fellow moderate Hutus. His own family is Tutsi, including his kids and wife, and harbor them at the hotel and protect them from the Hutu populations. You'll see in the movie, in the Hutu populations, this individual right here, where my mouse currently is, okay? He is going to be George Rutaganda. He is the leader and supplier of the Interahamwe militia, the unofficial people who were kind of running this genocide, and General Bizimundu, the leader of the actual Rwandan army. Both after the genocide ends, they both will be caught and both will be tried at the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, for leading genocide, etc. during this. You'll notice Colonel Oliver right here. He will be the UN leader that is sent to kind of try to help, even though a lot of it is unsuccessful with the genocide taking place. I really hope that you guys enjoy the movie. If you have any questions, feel free to email, send me a remind text, etc. And that's it for now, guys. So take care, enjoy the movie, and enjoy the week.